Go ahead. It's all yours, Raya.
Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you everybody for joining us. My name is Raya Samet. I am one of the steering committee members for the Michigan OER Network, but right now I'm putting on my hat as a member of the Open Education Committee at the University of Michigan Dearborn, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues and fellow committee members, Belen Garcia, who's one of our instructional designers at the Hub for Teaching and Learning on our campus, and Alan Wiggins, who is a faculty member in the Mathematics and Statistics Department. And what we're going to tell you today is a little bit about, as our title belies, how we are looking forward, back, but also looking forward into the future, and how we sort of transformed ourselves from a task force into an open education committee. So without further ado, I'm going to let Belen tell you just a little bit about who we are as a college, as a university.
Thanks, Raya. Dearborn is a public university, a regional campus founded in 1959. We have a strong percentage of non-traditional students in the campus. In ESL students, 46% of our students are non-traditional, and 42% of our students are Pell eligible. And we are the university in the United States with the highest percentage of Middle Eastern and North African students in the country.
So where we were was the Open Educational Resources Task Force. So this was an initiative formed underneath the Mardigian Library, and it was mainly focused on open educational resources, as the name indicates. And we had a grants program, and work was shared amongst all of the task force members. So the OER task force morphed into the Open Education Committee, which is now a campus-wide initiative. We have faculty, staff, and students. And we have broadened our scope from merely OER to open education in general, as the name indicates. And our grant program has changed a little bit, and we will tell you a little more about that later on. And we also have our work now in subcommittees instead, which we will also inform you of later.
Absolutely. So the first thing we did when we did this transformation was to write a mission and charge. What was our job? What was the scope of the committee? And what are we supposed to be doing? And this is big because it really signals that shift from just thinking about resources, OER, which is still really, really important. And we still do spend a lot of our time supporting resources, but also trying to broaden the concept on our campus and the awareness on our campus that open education is sort of an umbrella for a lot of things, including open scholarship, open pedagogy, and open practices more broadly. So resources can be a great starting point. They're not the end all be all, and we need to be thinking bigger.
So now we're going to tell you a little bit about how we structured our subcommittees and how we went through the work of that. So the very first subcommittee we're going to tell you about is the grants subcommittee. So what we wanted to do was to create a better framework from the OER task force. We wanted to reimagine our grants to decide which kind of grants we wanted to offer. We implemented a new grants portal in InfoReady, and we also wanted to be a little bit more careful to make sure that our projects could be successfully implemented. So the grants have all been launched so far, and we have 4 categories. We have education, review, adoption, remix, and creation. So of those 4, adoption and remix is the only holdover from the Open Education Resources Task Force. All the others are new. And one of the things we learned from that task force was that if someone is going to apply for an adoption or remix grant, we really wanted them to be surveying what resources were out there first. So that's one of the reasons why we included our review grant, which is a prerequisite for either adoption and remix or creation. And another thing that we learned was our management structure needed to be a little bit better. So we are working to do that. And now we're into our second year. So we're feeling fairly confident about how things are going, but it is a work in progress.
The Education and Outreach Subcommittee, it's for communicating with campus, stakeholder groups like students, faculty, and staff through a variety of media, promoting committee programs and opportunities, growing understanding on open through targeted events and creation and educational materials. For example, we had a presentation this summer about inclusive access, about the meaning of inclusive access. And in these conversations that we have, we're trying to include students as we did in the inclusive access presentation that was during student government. And we are planning to make informational flyers for students and other efforts that involve students so they can be part of the conversation.
So you heard about 2 of our 3 subcommittees, and this is the 3rd one, and it's assessment. So this is about trying to understand what's happening on our campus and better give us access to data. So looking at what's currently happening with OER usage and creation, open pedagogy projects, open scholarship, and also measuring the impact that our grants are having, and being able to do some analysis and comparison with all of the data that we have access to. And if we don't have access to it yet, figuring out what can we do in order to better capture that information. So some of the initial work was that we finally got access to sort of the body of syllabi. And that was actually kind of a hard thing for us to just get access to. And once we had them, we were able to do a pilot scan and look across an entire department to see what they were assigning as required course materials, and then trying to analyze which ones of those might be open, which ones might be available through the library, through our subscriptions, and which ones would be commercial products that students have to buy. And we plan to continue to do those scans across the entire campus. So we started with a single department, but broadening those out. And then eventually we'll also develop assessments for the grants program and for other initiatives that the committee takes on to see how are those changing things over time and where else do we need to be targeting. So we want to give you a few moments to ask us some questions now, but we'll also have more time during the Q&A. We realize there's not a lot of time. So if you want to ask us more questions or find out more, we have some blog posts up on the Hub's blog, which is there, but also the probably the easiest thing to do would be to send us an email, oedearborn@umich.edu, get the whole committee, and we can get back to you. So thank you, and I'll open up in case there are questions. Perhaps you can type something into the chat. I see there is one question there about whether this is a library committee or a shared governance committee. This is a campus-wide committee. And we do have representatives of faculty, students, and staff. Are there any other questions? Okay, if there aren't any questions yet, we can wait till the end and we can pass along to the next presenter.
Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I am riding in a car right now, so hopefully my internet connection stays stable. I'm Dr. Paige Wolf, Faculty Development Chair, Teaching and Learning Center, Teaching, Learning, and Educational Technology Center at the College of Lake County. And I'm presenting today with Suzanne Valentine French, one of our psychology instructors and our OER faculty champion, about how we've been reimagining OER at our College of Lake County. So a little bit of background about the College of Lake County. We are in the most northeastern county in the state of Illinois, butting right up to Wisconsin, so kind of midway between Milwaukee and Chicago. We are a comprehensive community college with 48 transfer programs and 112 certificate programs. And we've been around since 1969, so we just turned 50 in 2019. Different campuses in Grace Lake, Illinois, and then we've got 2 smaller campuses in Vernon Hills, Illinois, and Waukegan, Illinois. And just a little bit about our demographics. We serve nearly 23,000 students, 72% of which are part-time, and we have a ratio of 17 students per instructor. So I want to start the presentation talking about a wonderful start we got with offering open education resources to our faculty. We got off to a great start, and we've been doing this since 2014. In January of 2014, we hosted Dr. Cable Green, who is the Director of Global Learning at Creative Commons, and he first introduced our faculty to the concept of OER and Creative Commons licenses, and provided data that supported eliminating textbook costs.
Paige, I think you're kind of going out on us, so I will take over. Sorry, I'm Suzanne Valentine French.
Okay.
So
okay.
a couple of, you got yourself back or no? No, okay. So we'd identified
Yeah.
the Taletsi site as sort of a good OER clearinghouse. And there were a number of key players that were on board. There was administrative support. There was incentives from the foundation office. They actually offered some of the first stipends and funding for these programs. And there were a number of faculty that kind of took this on, myself included. At the same time, we're fortunate that our bookstore is in-house, so they didn't have a big obstacle that I know a number of colleges have had to overcome because of their bookstores. The library faculty were very interested in OER. I mean, it's a big librarian thing. Anything that's open, books should be open, everything should be open. And so they created a number of OER LibGuides for faculty and did different workshops on that to help faculty to understand the Creative Commons licensing system. And then educational technology. CLC does have an account with Pressbooks and so on. We also became one of the first colleges in Illinois to become a member of the CCC OER. And we also very early on in the second cohort became an OpenStax institutional partner. Attended a lot of the open education conferences. And by 2018, actually felt that we'd kind of understood this concept enough that we collaborated on an OER summit with a neighboring college. In addition to all of that, we do have something in our registration system that places a little gold star so students can see this. It's not necessarily just OER, but any kind of course in which the materials are under $25. At the same time, there was an early OER task force, and they, in 2016, tried to create sort of their strategic plan for this. So why did we plateau? Because that was a big thing for us. We, came out of the gate running, and even before COVID, we can't blame COVID for all of this. Stuff started to stop. So early initiatives, as I said, saw several faculty take this on, but encouraging new people to consider OER was becoming a challenge. And by 2018, we realized that if we wanted to push the needle forward for our college, we might have to rethink how we've been doing things. One curious problem was the perception many faculty members had that they were being asked to create new materials from scratch, rather than tweak already existing OER for their courses. We're not sure why this notion took hold. It could be because some of the early adopters did do this, or they really majorly revamped and edited, completely materials that were out there. But it is a perception that we've been very, hard to try to challenge. Like, no, you don't have to start from the beginning. There's a lot of stuff out there already. Another key reason for a plateau was confusion from one year to the next as to who was actually funding this. Your foundation, Toletsi, it kept getting moved around, and eventually it ended up with, division deans sometimes having to find money in their already stretched for cash budgets to help a faculty in their division do OER. In addition to that, the early OER initiative at the college was spearheaded by Toletsi, the library, EdTech, but those personnel were not often given time to devote really to help to support the faculty that were trying to create or adopt or remix OER. And so on top of their already really demanding jobs, they were given this mantle as well. And finally, like many institutions, CLC has a turnover in executive staff. In fact, we're currently dealing with that now. So when the person who holds the purse strings is constantly changing and it's a revolving door of talking heads, it's really hard to get a sense of whether or not your program or initiative is going to continue to be a priority for the college. So this is what we kind of identified as maybe some of the reasons why we were having issues. So what were our solutions? Well, in 2019, we completely revamped our task force. Comprised of faculty initially from mathematics, English, and psychology, as well as the library. It has more recently added economics. People from the bookstore, Paige, who is the faculty chair of Toletsi, an administrative lead, who's the dean of business and social science at the college, and more recently adding an educational technology designer. We already had an OER dedicated librarian, but in 2019, an OER faculty champion was added, myself, to help with some of that support for faculty, to help them provide information as well as to help them through some of their projects. And in 2021, the college applied for and was admitted and accepted to the American Association of Colleges and Universities OER initiative. And during the opening session of that program, we realized that a lack of structure to our college's OER program had been the real problem. And so we needed information all in one place. We needed a process that was clear. We needed to provide consistent funding and support. And so in addition to that, OER had to become a priority for the college, such as being placed in the college's strategic plan. That last point was actually aided by the fact that another task force, which I'm actually representing in the background here, which was Resources for Student Success, had also recommended funding and support for OER. I'm happy to say we actually managed that in the last year. It was sort of surprising. That AACU initiative had really helped us to stay on task. Because we knew we were having to report back to somebody else, and it sort of kept our eye on the prize. And in the spring of 2022, we actually created OER Central on our SharePoint hub that basically provided a lot of that information to faculty. We had an application process in place. We had a budget to offer grants, and OER had actually become part of the college's strategic plan. So at this point, I just wanted to share kind of what our OER Central looks like on the SharePoint site. It's divided into 6 different areas right now, but of course, it's obviously something that's constantly going to be changing. So we have an area just for those who are starting out, like what exactly is this? What does that represent, those 3 letters? And where faculty can learn about the benefits and, we're honest, the challenges that they might face, but it also gives them information about how this has actually helped students. Where they can find OER, as you know, there are so many different collections, repositories, areas where they could go, and it can be overwhelming. So we did kind of streamline it, but do have a document that if you're really not too scared, here's all the other places you can go for to look for such information for your classes. How to adapt and create OER. So here's where we have information about Pressbooks, LibreText, even Google Docs and Microsoft Word, and all of the different ways in which you could actually create materials and other sort of editing resources, as well as information that they might need to know about Creative Commons licensing and how you remix stuff and so forth. Getting started, getting help for their projects, workshops, conferences, including this one is listed here, different resources to help. And then I've been starting to create a library, a catalog of everything that the faculty are in fact doing to showcase, to other faculty, hey, have a look at what people are doing at the college. And the college does have an outward facing website as well for stuff that we actually do use at the college, but this was to be in-house. So where do we go from here? Oh boy, so many questions. And actually that first talk gave us some hints for that last point. Thank you. Mapping out a Z degree for associative arts degree. Offering our own OER conference summit during Open Week in March. And then, as you know, task force are temporary, trying to actually make that switch to a more permanent. So thank you to those who went before us, because I've been writing stuff down as to how we might actually make that move. And this is all of our contact information. Okay, so let me.
Thank you, everybody. I have been trying to add to the chat as well, and congratulations, Reedley College, for being part of the cohort.
Yeah. Okay, great.
I think we have a minute or two if people have questions before we go on to the 3rd round.
Alan asked that we email it all the time. It's actually on the Tletzi's own site too. There's links to it. So the hub is something that's actually if you want to do anything pretty much at the college, you actually link into the hub. So they're going to get it. And whenever we've added stuff new or there's new workshops or whatever, that faculty are emailed about this.
Somebody did ask if we could post a link to OER Central. It is on our intranet, but I'm guessing what we can do is showcase maybe some screenshots or some of the layout of what we decided to put in there, and that could kind of give you an idea.
Any other questions? Okay.
So I think it's us. Are we ready to start with ours? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I think we're going on to round 3. One moment here.